He's just a placeholder until something better comes along." Those words, spoken by my wife of 7 years, sliced through the ambient music and cheerful conversations at what was supposed to be my 35th birthday celebration. I froze, champagne flute halfway to my lips, as Natalie's voice carried from behind the partially open door of the venue's private lounge. "You've milked him long enough, sweetheart. Soon we'll find someone who matches our level." That acidic encouragement came from Lorraine, my mother-in-law, whose approval I'd foolishly sought for nearly a decade. I should have stormed in there, confronted them both, and created the kind of scene that would have made everyone uncomfortable. Instead, I gently pushed the door closed and walked back to my guests with a practiced smile that hid the collapsing universe inside me. Because you see, I already knew, and they had no idea what I had set in motion. My name is Daniel Mercer. Until 3 months ago, I was the proud owner of Mercer Dynamics, a supply chain logistics company that I built from nothing into an 8-figure business. I drove a Tesla Model S, lived in a 5,000-square-foot house in Buckhead's most exclusive neighborhood, and was married to Natalie, a former marketing executive whose classic beauty and sharp mind had captivated me from our first meeting. We met at a charity auction 8 years ago. I was there supporting a children's hospital that had saved my nephew's life. Natalie was there because, as she later admitted, that's where the money is. I found her honesty refreshing then. Funny how perspective changes things. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Within 6 months, we were engaged. Her mother, Lorraine, a high-end real estate agent with connections throughout Atlanta's social elite, initially seemed skeptical of me. Not of my success or wealth, she'd vetted that thoroughly, but of my background. "Daniel grew up in Decatur," she would tell people at our engagement party, as if announcing I had a communicable disease. What she meant was, he wasn't born into this world. He clawed his way in. She wasn't wrong. My father was a mechanic who died when I was 14. My mother cleaned houses to put me through college. I worked 2 jobs while earning my business degree. Nothing was handed to me. I fought for every opportunity. For years, I thought Lorraine had eventually warmed to me. She would call me son at family gatherings, praise my business acumen to her friends, and even defended me when Natalie and I had our occasional arguments. I now understand it was all theater, keeping the golden goose happy while they waited for a platinum replacement. Natalie and I settled into what I believed was a happy marriage. We traveled extensively, hosted dinner parties for Atlanta's business community, and seemed, from all outside appearances, to be the perfect power couple. I was faithful, attentive, and invested everything I had, emotionally and financially, into building our life together. When we couldn't conceive a child naturally after 2 years of trying, I suggested adoption. Natalie adamantly refused. "I'm not raising someone else's mistake." That should have been my first warning. But love blinds you to the flaws in others, especially when you've convinced yourself that you've found your soulmate. The first hint that something was wrong came last Christmas. Natalie received a text message during dinner that made her smile in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. She excused herself and took the call in our bedroom, door closed. When she returned 30 minutes later, her explanation was vague. Just Jen having another crisis with her boyfriend. Jen was her college roommate who lived in Seattle now. They spoke maybe twice a year. Then came the unexplained charges on our joint credit card. A $700 lunch at Bacchanalia when she told me she was having a salad with her girlfriends. A weekend yoga retreat that coincided with her Instagram posts from a hotel bar nowhere near any retreat center. New lingerie that I never saw her wear. I'm not a naturally suspicious person. I trusted Natalie implicitly, but I'm also not a fool. After the third girls' night that ended with her coming home at 2 a.m. smelling of unfamiliar cologne, I decided to pay attention. The disrespect became more blatant. She would correct me in front of friends, not just on facts, but on opinions. "Daniel thinks cryptocurrency is the future," she'd say with an eye roll. But he also thought that juicing company was a good investment. She'd bring up my few business failures, but never my many successes. During a dinner with potential investors, she interrupted my explanation of our company's 5-year growth strategy to announce, "What Daniel means is that he hopes someone will buy him out before the market shifts." The table went quiet. I laughed it off as a joke, but the damage was done. Small humiliations accumulated. She forgot our anniversary, but remembered to send her mother flowers on the same day. She scheduled a spa weekend during my keynote address at an industry conference. When my mother was hospitalized with pneumonia, Natalie claimed she was too busy with her charity committee to visit, but I later found photos of her at a resort in Cabo San Lucas on her friend's social media. Then came Lorraine's increasing presence in our lives. She had always been involved, but suddenly she was everywhere, dropping by unannounced, calling Natalie multiple times daily, accompanying us on what should have been romantic dinners. They would exchange glances when I spoke, their silent communication excluding me from conversations in my own home. One night, I came downstairs for water and overheard them in the kitchen. "Marcus Powell is divorcing that model," Lorraine was saying. "His family practically owns half of Buckhead." "Is he looking?" Natalie asked. "Not officially, but I've arranged for you to be seated next to him at the Andersons' gala next month. Wear the blue Versace. It makes your eyes pop." "What about Daniel?" "Business trip. I've already planted the seed about that conference in Chicago." There was no conference in Chicago. But suddenly there was an urgent email from a potential partner requesting my presence there, on the exact weekend of the Andersons' gala. Something broke inside me that night. Not my heart, that would come later, but my illusions. The careful facade I'd maintained crumbled, revealing the truth I'd been avoiding. My marriage was a transaction that had exceeded its value to my wife. I did go to Chicago that weekend, but not before hiring a private investigator to document what my wife would do in my absence. The photographs arrived in my hotel room via encrypted email. Natalie, radiant in that blue Versace dress, laughing with a silver-haired man I recognized as Marcus Powell, their heads close together, his hand on the small of her back, them leaving the gala in his Bentley, entering his penthouse at 11:42 p.m., her leaving, disheveled but smiling, at 5:17 a.m. I stared at those images for hours, not in shock, that had passed weeks ago, but with a strange, cold clarity. This wasn't just about the betrayal of infidelity. This was about years of calculated deception. This was about being used as a stepping stone, a placeholder, a means to an end. I called my attorney at 6 a.m. "I need a full financial and legal assessment," I told him. "Every asset, account, property, and investment. I need to know what's solely in my name, what's joint, and what can be protected." "Are we talking divorce, Daniel?" Alan had been my lawyer for over a decade. "We're talking survival." From that moment, I operated with surgical precision. I returned home, kissed Natalie on the cheek when she greeted me at the door, and asked about her weekend with a smile that mirrored her own facade. "Oh, you know, quiet. Just dinner with Mom and some Netflix." I nodded, mentally cataloging the lie. "The Chicago deal looks promising," I said, adding my own untruth to the tapestry we were weaving. Over the next few weeks, I began restructuring my company. On paper, it appeared to be standard corporate housekeeping, moving shares into different holding companies, updating operating agreements, reconciling accounts. In reality, I was building a fortress around everything I'd worked for. I revised my will, removing Natalie as beneficiary. I transferred our joint savings, accumulated primarily from my business profits, into a new account under the guise of preparing for a major investment opportunity. I documented every conversation where Natalie or Lorraine discussed using me for financial gain. I installed security cameras in our home and recorded their planning sessions in my own living room, all while maintaining the appearance of the devoted, oblivious husband. Then came my 35th birthday party. Natalie had insisted on making it an extravagant affair. 200 guests at the St. Regis Ballroom, including everyone who mattered in Atlanta's business community. I now understood why. It wasn't to celebrate me, but to showcase herself to potential upgrades. The party was her audition for a better life. And that's when I overheard those fateful words that confirmed everything. He's just a placeholder until something better comes along. At that moment, standing outside that door, I made my decision. The time for evidence gathering was over. The time for action had arrived. My revenge required perfect timing and absolute control. Emotions would only cloud execution, so I compartmentalized my hurt and betrayal, channeling everything into a precise strategy. First, the financial separation. Over 3 days, I transferred all remaining joint assets into my secure accounts, removed Natalie as an authorized user on all credit cards, changed the passwords to every financial portal, liquidated investments that couldn't be protected, contacted all vendors associated with our household accounts to remove her access. Next, the legal groundwork. Working with Alan and his team, I filed for divorce, citing adultery and fraud, prepared a comprehensive dossier of evidence, located the prenuptial agreement Natalie had signed, which included an infidelity clause that left her with nothing, drafted a separate civil suit against Lorraine for conspiracy and interference with contractual relations, secured temporary protective orders, preventing both of them from entering any of my properties or contacting my business associates. The personal touches required more finesse. I changed the locks and security codes on our home, arranged for the lease termination on Natalie's Mercedes, which was in my company's name, notified our household staff that their employment would continue, but they would report only to me, contacted the board of each charity Natalie chaired, resigning her position due to personal matters, arranged for a security team to monitor our property. The most satisfying preparation, however, was for Natalie's spa weekend, which my private investigator confirmed was actually a getaway with Marcus Powell to his lake house. I had 3 days of uninterrupted time to set my plan in motion. I knew exactly when she would return. I knew exactly what she would find, and I knew exactly how her world would collapse. On the 3rd day of Natalie's absence, I sat in my home office watching the security camera feed. The time was 4:17 p.m. when her Uber pulled into our circular driveway. She looked refreshed, glowing even, the radiance of a woman who believed she was successfully juggling multiple lives. The first sign of trouble came when her key wouldn't work in the front door. I watched her try repeatedly, frustration building, before she rang the doorbell. No answer, of course. I had instructed the staff to take the afternoon off. She called my cell phone. I let it go to voicemail. After 20 minutes of increasing panic, trying every door, peering through windows, calling me repeatedly, she called her mother. 15 minutes later, Lorraine's Lexus screeched into the driveway. Their animated conversation outside my front door was captured perfectly by the doorbell camera. Lorraine suggested they go to her house to figure this out. As they turned to leave, a courier van pulled up. "Natalie Harrison Mercer?" the delivery person called out. "Yes?" "Legal documents for you and Lorraine Hatcher. Please sign here." The look on Natalie's face as she opened the large envelope was worth every second of the pain she had caused me. Pure, unadulterated shock followed by dawning horror as she flipped through the first few pages. Lorraine grabbed the documents, her face reddening as she scanned the contents. "This is outrageous! He can't do this!" But I could. And I had. They retreated to Lorraine's car, documents in hand, both on their phones, presumably calling their lawyers. The show was just beginning. Phase 2 unfolded exactly as planned. While they were meeting with Lorraine's attorney, Natalie's credit cards were declined as she attempted to pay the legal retainer. Her debit card also declined. Lorraine had to cover the full amount, the first of many financial burdens she would assume. When they left the lawyer's office, they found a repo company removing Natalie's Mercedes from the parking lot. The scene they created, Natalie screaming at the impassive repo men while Lorraine filmed on her phone, threatening lawsuits, was witnessed by several of her social circle exiting a nearby restaurant. By nightfall, Natalie's phone was exploding with notifications. The private investigator's photos of her weekend tryst had mysteriously appeared on social media. Marcus Powell, married despite his pursuits, was already issuing denials and had blocked her number. Friends were texting for explanations. The president of her most prestigious charity board had emailed requesting her immediate resignation. The next morning, my attorney provided her attorney with the complete evidence package. 300 pages documenting years of calculated deception, conspiracy, and infidelity. The prenuptial agreement was included, with the relevant clauses highlighted. Her lawyer, after reviewing the materials, advised her to settle quickly and quietly. Fighting would only bring more humiliation and drain what little resources she had left. All the while, I maintained complete silence. No angry calls, no vindictive texts, no public statements. My absence was more devastating than any words could have been. 3 days after her return, Natalie appeared at our neighborhood gate, trying to gain access. The security guard, following my instructions, politely but firmly turned her away. The neighbors watched from behind curtains as she broke down, mascara streaming down her face, begging to be let in to get her things. Her things had already been packed and delivered to a storage facility, the first month's rent prepaid. The access code was included in the legal paperwork, if she had bothered to read it. 1 week after her return, the social fallout was complete. Invitations dried up. Acquaintances crossed the street to avoid her. Her Instagram followers dropped by thousands daily as the scandal spread. Marcus Powell had left the country for a previously scheduled business trip. 3 of her closest friends, who had covered for her affairs, were now personae non grata in our social circle, their loyalty to Natalie proving costly to their own standings. Lorraine faced her own reckoning. The civil suit I filed against her included evidence of her encouraging Natalie's infidelity, plotting against me, and making disparaging statements that constituted both defamation and tortious interference. As a real estate agent, her reputation was her currency, and it was now worthless. Clients canceled listings. Her broker distanced himself. The Real Estate Association launched an ethics investigation. Within 2 weeks, Lorraine had placed her home on the market with a competing agency. Within 3, she had accepted an offer far below asking price. The legal proceedings moved with unusual speed, thanks to the overwhelming evidence and Natalie's inability to mount any meaningful defense. The divorce was finalized in record time, with the judge's comments on the extraordinary and calculated betrayal becoming part of the public record. Natalie received nothing. Not the house, not alimony, not even her wedding jewelry, which had been purchased with my funds and reclaimed under the fraud provisions. Lorraine settled the civil suit by surrendering her remaining assets and signing a non-disclosure agreement that prevented her from ever discussing me or my business publicly. By the end of the month, both women had been thoroughly, systematically, and legally destroyed, and I had not spoken a single word to either of them. Our wedding anniversary fell exactly 1 month after Natalie's return from her fateful weekend. In previous years, we had celebrated with a private dinner at Bacchanalia, followed by exchanging gifts and reminiscing about our vows. This year, I hosted a charity gala at the same St. Regis Ballroom where my birthday party had been held. The event benefited foster children, a pointed choice given Natalie's dismissal of adoption. The guest list included everyone from our social circle, key business leaders, and several celebrities who supported the cause. Natalie wasn't invited, of course, but I knew she would be aware of it. The event had been covered extensively in the local press, with my philanthropic response to personal challenges positioned as an inspirational story of resilience. I arrived alone, dressed in a custom tuxedo, and was immediately surrounded by well-wishers and subtle romantic interest from several eligible women. I accepted their condolences with grace, but made it clear I wasn't ready to date. The truth was, I wasn't sure I would ever trust anyone enough to try again. The evening was a spectacular success. We raised over $500,000 for the charity. I gave a speech about the importance of authentic relationships and supporting children who needed homes, never once mentioning my ex-wife, but ensuring everyone understood the subtext. As I was leaving, my security team alerted me that Natalie was outside the hotel. She had been there for hours, watching guests arrive, standing across the street in a cheap dress, a far cry from her usual designer wardrobe. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of the expensive makeup she once couldn't live without. For a brief moment, I considered acknowledging her, walking over, perhaps even exchanging a few words. Instead, I stepped into my waiting car without looking in her direction. Later that night, as I sipped bourbon on my terrace overlooking the Atlanta skyline, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Please, Daniel, can we talk? I've lost everything." I blocked the number without replying. Because the truth was, she hadn't lost everything. She had thrown it away. The life we could have built together. The trust I had given her. The love that had been real, at least on my side. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds don't heal. Some people don't deserve second chances. My mother called the next day, concerned about the news coverage. "Are you okay, honey?" she asked, her voice carrying the warmth that had sustained me through every challenge of my life. "I'm getting there," I told her honestly. "You know, revenge might feel good now, but eventually you'll need to let go. For your own sake." She was right, of course. The revenge hadn't filled the void left by Natalie's betrayal. It hadn't repaired my ability to trust. It hadn't made me whole again. But it had delivered justice. It had restored balance to a universe where she and Lorraine thought they could use and discard me without consequences. It had demonstrated that I wasn't a placeholder. I was the prize they had foolishly discarded. 6 months later, I sold Mercer Dynamics for $95 million. I donated a significant portion to organizations supporting children aging out of foster care and invested the rest. I bought a house on the coast, started writing the book I'd always wanted to write, and slowly rebuilt my capacity for joy. Occasionally, news of Natalie or Lorraine would reach me. Natalie working as a sales associate at a mid-tier department store. Lorraine moving to Florida to live with her sister. Their spectacular fall remained a cautionary tale in Atlanta social circles. I never spoke publicly about what happened. I never needed to. The evidence spoke for itself, and my silence communicated more than recriminations ever could. On what would have been our 10th anniversary, I received a letter from Natalie, forwarded through my attorney, as she still didn't have my address. It contained an apology, explanations, pleas for forgiveness, and a request to meet. I read it once, then placed it in a drawer alongside the only photograph of her I had kept. Our wedding day, when I had believed in forever. Maybe someday I would respond. Maybe someday the anger would fade enough to allow closure. Maybe someday I would want to hear what she had to say. But not today. Today, I was no one's placeholder. I was simply, finally, free. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.